Good afternoon. I guess I should say good morning, coworkers. That's actually our tagline.
Yes.
We are here to talk about Enneagrams, which is kind of like a personality test, one of many. But basically, you become a number, and that number defines you. And then in the second half of the show, we have our first live feature from one of our members who reached out about a few questions she wanted answered live pertaining to her business and her business development. So we're super excited about that. We kind of want to just get through the Enneagrams at this point just to talk about that.
Well, I feel like there's just so much hype about it. And then I'm like, what is the difference between this test and all the other tests that you should take in your life? Yeah, so we took the test.
And that's kind of like, I think the key backstory to this is Kat had mentioned Enneagrams to me, I guess a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Because of the networking event that she went to. So it was more related to entrepreneurship. But then I heard about it from my therapist. And I was like, I wonder what the connection is. So there's also like the Myers-Briggs personality test, which I think is most connected to Enneagrams. But everyone knows I like astrology and that kind of thing. So this isn't really from that. But it's still interesting. A little bit of like background information. I guess in theory, your number that your Enneagram shows you is actually created between like age 0 to 6. So it's pretty well established like early on. But so far, all I've seen is it's just questions you answer on a personality test. So part of me is like, if I would have taken this test 5 years ago, my answers might have been different. So I don't know how true that can be. But that's one piece of it. And then the other piece that I thought was interesting is there's 9 numbers. So it's 1 through 9. But each like 3, I guess it's 3. Yeah.
Every number has wings.
That
okay.
too. Yeah. But I guess like 2s, 3s, and 4s come from the heart.
Yeah, the grouping.
Yeah. And then 5, 6s, and 7s come from the mind. And then 8, 9, and 1 comes more from the body. Mm-hmm. So that's just another like piece of all of this.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I don't know. I thought it was like interesting that you said that it's from your childhood basically, and basically that you don't change, and this is kind of how you react to things is how you react to things now. And I guess we just want to go over it a little bit and see how we can apply this to being in entrepreneurship, and not just focusing I guess in the test it tells you the good and the bad, and I feel like the good is what everybody focuses on, but really the bad is how you can improve, especially in business. Everyone's always going to look at the good, and the good will always be there. Even in astrological signs, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a Pisces, I'm this and that, but you never think, you're like, oh yeah, I'm also sensitive or whatever. You just kind of like ignore it. But I really think if we focus on it, and then let's say for any test you choose, whether it's Enneagrams or just following zodiac signs and stuff like that, just try to take a look at the negatives and how you can improve upon that. And I guess the point, from the networking event, they said the point is to, if you work on the bad, because the good is already good, if you work on the bad, then you can become whole, which is, I guess, what we're all trying to work towards,
Right. Well, I thought it could relate to kind of our discussion on the 5 love languages, where it's like, if you are this certain number, and once you know your number, it tells you what your desires are, what your triggers are, like in terms of stress, or how you work best in a work environment or with a team. It also says like your deepest fears. So you can kind of use those things to know how that might play out in your business, or like what parts of your business you might feel a little more uncomfortable with or a little more confident with. And then from there, you might be able to also know, like, if you have a business partner, like what's their number? Like, what might they be good at naturally, so that they can focus on that part of the business, and then I can focus on this. So I think it's interesting, especially with entrepreneurship. I could see why they mentioned it in the networking event for sure.
Well, yeah, it was interesting because the networking event was mainly people in the hospitality. It was only people in the hospitality industry, but I would say mainly event planners. And because it was mainly event planners, so many people were number ones.
That's funny.
And then as you start going, like when you start getting more into the people who don't like networking, there's like a number. I think that's like later on. I think they're like the 6th or something. And the more introverted people, it was like 2 people raising their hands.
Right.
But then it was like number 1. Everyone's like, so, which is funny because I thought when I was listening in, I hadn't done the test and I thought it was like an 8, which was the enthusiast. Because I was like, hello, that's me. But really, I took the test and I got a 1, which was the perfectionist. So I tried to wear my perfectionist shirt today. Businessy.
I think, I guess that does fit you. When I took the test, because the other thing my therapist had mentioned, she was like, when you read through the descriptions of each of the numbers, it's not always what description matches you the most, but sometimes it's what fears like you connect with the most. Like when you read the fears part, you're just like, oh yeah, that would suck. Like I for sure am like super afraid of that happening. And that's kind of how you know, like that's probably your number. So when I first took one of the tests, in the link I just put in our chat, it gave me 3 numbers and it was like a 4, a 7, and a 2. And I felt like 4 and 7 made the most sense. But then I took like 3 other tests. I got different numbers. So I was kind of like, is this even really a thing? But I ended up finding 4s were kind of like a repeated result that I got. So I'm a 4. But it was funny because when I read the descriptions of like 7 and 4, I read 7 and I was like, yeah, that sounds like me. But then when I read the fears of 4, I was like, oh, that's me. So it's interesting. And then the main website I think is a good like resource for this is the Enneagram Institute. They have like the full descriptions of all the numbers and they kind of get more in depth with it. And then another one, which is linked in that link I just put in the chat, is Crystal Knows, I think, is like the name of the website. And whether you know your number or not, she does give a lot of information on, I don't know if she's a she, but that website gives a lot of information.
Person gives.
On
Kenneth.
But it gets pretty in depth. I was gonna share my screen just to show you guys.
Go for it.
Let me see. So I took many because I'm always skeptical and I like to feel like, okay, I really trust this. So I looked up this website after Googling like the best Enneagram tests. Here's kind of an overview of what each of the numbers are. I don't know why this is being weird.
So yeah, that's a good
yours
chart.
Is the reformer.
It's a what?
Your number 1 says the reformer.
Really? I got the perfectionist on the other. I guess there's multiple names because
I've noticed they use different names. Because I feel like I've seen it for number 4, like the individualist or the creative. So I don't know.
See, but then I read like, oh, it was number 7. Sorry, the enthusiast one.
Yeah.
I was like the busy, fun, loving type. But you know what? I think about that and I'm like, I am busy or whatever, but I guess when it comes to, again, the fears or the negatives or whatever, I'm like, I always am like number 1.
Right.
Yeah.
So these were the ones, I mean, I feel like other websites describe these better, so I won't go through it on this one too much, but there's a bunch of links at the bottom that you can try. I did this one and I think I got a 6, so I was kind of like, what? And then I did this one and I think that one gives you multiple options.
I did the Truity one.
Yeah. And then I also did this one. But I think that the Truity one for me overlapped this other one I did through Google. But I'd say like the top 3 are pretty good. And then there is one you can pay for that's like $12 from the Enneagram Institute if you did want to do that. But yeah, and then the other thing, because I like to just study. So I had Dakota do these and he got the same number no matter what test he did. Like it was just like solid. And I'm like, okay, so maybe it's just me that I just like changed my answer.
This is a frequent Sasha problem.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me.
So that was interesting. But yeah, I think it's still good to note. And then I'll stop sharing, but
I think it'd be I don't know if you have this up or I can pull it up really quick, but the test itself and we don't have to do it, but just because I think a lot of people are like, what is this test? So it really only takes 10 minutes, I would say. And it's just rating how you feel about certain statements that are posed. It's interesting, though, because now that I think about it, like, let's say the statement was, I'm a unique person, and you're supposed to rate, like, is this accurate or all the way to inaccurate, right? Okay, something like this.
So I have this one shared. This is the crystal nose one. I just chose this one because I like the descriptions at the end. Or it like goes really into depth, but this is kind of the format, I would say.
Yeah. So then, okay, let's say you agree with this number 5, like all the way. But then I also think that's such a weird one, though. Hold on. This is a hard one to choose. Okay, but basically this is a test, and then at the end you get your number, and then you can read about your number. I mean, very straightforward in that aspect. But like, okay, I got when it said I consider myself to be a unique person, and let's say you agree with that 5%, like a 5 out of 5 or whatever. And I just think it's interesting that would technically make you kind of like more individualistic, right? Let's say you got number 4. But I think if that's paired with I need to keep things orderly all the time, right? Then basically you're just a number 1, because being unique, like you think you're unique, plus you need to be organized all the time. Does that just mean you need to be controlling?
Right.
So is that really just a number 1? So I think it's interesting because when you read certain statements, you're like, oh, well, if I say yes to this, I'm totally going to get this number.
Well, that's the other part too, is like the wing part where you are a number as like your basic thing, but then from there's 2 wings that you can be. So as a 1, I think you could be a 1 wing 2 or a 1 wing 9 probably. And then that kind of means something totally different. Like that also defines your personality. So it's, I don't know, it gets pretty in depth. The wings I think are harder to nail down, or at least from what I saw with taking these tests. But I think for the most part, once you know your main number, you can kind of read the wings and just know which one's you, because they're pretty different distinctions. But this website goes through the basic desires, the fears, the strengths, weaknesses, growth, how you like to work, which I thought was really cool.
Well, let's stop at how you like to work, just to
this is for number 1.
Relate it back a little bit here.
So communicating with Cat, take them seriously, understanding their motivation to do what is right.
Oh, so that's if you're working with me. Okay, gotcha.
Right. And then if we're having a meeting, abide by the scheduled meeting time and focus on conveying the message clearly.
It's so funny.
Address specific assignments or concerns and encourage them to share their thoughts.
Oh my god, giving feedback to an Enneagram 1, I need to tell this funny story. But I'll tell it when you stop screen sharing, because it's weird because you just hear my voice. But
mistakes while also expressing how you feel, allow them an opportunity to reflect by themselves if necessary.
Okay, go to weaknesses. Like scroll up a little bit. Okay. So let's go with difficulty accepting hard realities. So you're like, oh, this is my personality. Oh my god, that's so true. Weakness. But how can you apply that to your business, right?
Right.
So, you can always let things go a little bit. Like you almost have to actively like work on these things. I guess what I'm trying to get at, or possibility of becoming obsessive or self-righteous. Like maybe I get obsessed with a particular kit and I'm like, I need to make this happen, but maybe it just doesn't. Or like, oh no, this is the right way to go. Maybe it's not. Maybe I should follow a trend that's coming out or something. So I guess to me, these are just things I should keep in mind, particularly more than my strengths, because this is where I fall short.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't even know.
Go to 4. Is there 4?
Another component, or do you want to look at 4?
Let's look at 4.
Okay. And then this one here, the website too, I think it goes into the wings here. So if anyone's interested in that part.
It's so funny when it says wings, I almost feel like guys are like, this is stupid.
I know. All right, let's go to weaknesses. Withdrawing in times of difficulty, fixating on what they don't have. Who focus too much on themselves, probably. Reacting strongly and emotionally to hardship. Ding, ding, ding. When I read all of these, I was like, oh, yeah. Okay, and then work. So avoid being overly logical and focusing on sharing your feelings. Appreciate their connection with their emotions. I feel like because I know I'm emotional, I try to like offset it by being logical though. So, but I think that might relate to my wing. So I'll get into that another.
Well, no, but I think this is if I'm talking to you, right?
Right. But I mean, I think in conversations and work stuff, I prefer logical and like.
Do you? I don't know. Do you? When you get an email from someone that's like a little straightforward, and then you're just like, what do you mean? What is this? And it makes me so angry.
I don't know. I prefer straightforward, I think.
No, straightforward, but like, I think if it's almost too stern, you overthink it, no?
I guess it depends on the task or like what's being communicated. But I mean, so I'm a 4 wing 5.
Oh, okay.
And 5s are investigators and they like knowledge, they like facts, they are like more in their mind. They're not like emotional. They're not like coming from the heart. It's like part of that other group. So I think that's where there's times where I like gear towards that side where I'm just like, let's just get it done or, you know, be more straightforward with this. But yeah, I guess I do rely more on feeling a connection in whatever it is if there's some sort of emotional component involved, even in work.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But yeah,
see, but then okay. Okay, go. Do another one.
To a minimum, avoiding chit chat. Oh look, see. We didn't read the email part. That's what it was.
Oh, there you go.
That's funny. Keep emails to a minimum. I guess that's what I mean. It's just like straightforward, objective, like because I'm too emotional that I would
That's true. Yeah.
Be sensitive with feedback, share encouragement, and frame negative feedback as an opportunity for growth. Openly share your feelings and connect with the type 4 emotionally. Empathize without trying to agree completely, which allows them personal autonomy and individuality. I feel like when I think of business, when it comes to this stuff, like being a 4, I guess I feel like I've always been the more like idea person behind it or like emotionally driven to complete tasks or to like do a certain project within the business. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's where I would need a partner that would like offset that by being like a little more logical or like, I don't know.
Yeah, because you're hardcore feelings. And then maybe someone who's like just, oh, maybe that's why we get along.
I know. I was thinking that.
Oh my God. It all makes sense.
It all makes sense. Well, I didn't know you were a 1. Like when you said it this morning, I was like, oh, wow. That
I know. I feel like I always want to show my number.
I know. I have numbers on my earrings, but.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Trying to be festive.
In Sasha's defense, she had the earrings first.
Yes.
And I love how this is like my backup. Oh, let me just grab a 1 balloon.
It worked really well.
See, that's my only thing with the Enneagrams, though, because let's say, okay, first of all, you took the test multiple times, got different numbers. Then, let's say now you got a kind of consistent number, maybe. Now you have wings. So basically, aren't you just a little bit of all the numbers. I know you're supposed to focus on like the main one, but like, I guess to me,
yeah, well, that's
like,
what was interesting. Like, I think it's best when you look into the wings because it's like even more specific. Whereas like when you're still in like the general level, it's still kind of like you could be all the numbers or you kind of resonate with all of them.
So if you say you walk around, you would say I'm a 5 wing 6 or whatever. Like, you wouldn't just be like I'm a 5 because.
Yeah. So here's this 4 wing 5. It's called the Free Spirit.
Wow.
Whereas like just a 4 is the individualist. So it like breaks it down a little more in terms of like what it might mean. So just like the general thing here, tend to identify most with type 4s, but might also relate to type 5s, introspective, creative, and perceptive, blah, 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 right? But again, because a 5 is more of the mind, then I feel like it kind of balances. Where like if I was a 4 wing 3, I'd probably be a lot more emotion based and kind of like heart based.
Yeah, this is very much you.
Yeah.
I almost want to take it again because I didn't get to the wings part, I guess. Or maybe this was on the other site.
I only read the descriptions of the wings and then decided which one was like for me. Because I didn't see like a way of testing it like in the test that I took. So
yeah,
I think it's pretty clear. Let me see. Okay, so you're either a 1 wing 9 or a 1 wing 2.
Oh snap! I just realized that.
Oh, you're probably a wing 2. Oh, look, the optimist.
See, but I'm like, isn't that similar to an enthusiast in general, like a 7? I'm just so confused.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's one option. Let me just see what the other 1 wing 2. Because I feel like you are a little more like heart centered. I don't know.
I'm like, I could be all of these.
I think you sound more like this one.
And you're going to call me an activist. What desire for justice and equality do I have?
No, but
sorry,
this part,
world.
You're generally warmer and more interpersonally aware.
That part, yeah. But even the 1 is so interesting to me because I see the perfectionist side, but almost the reformer side. I guess because but then part of me is like, Sasha's equally a reformer. Like,
I see what you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the things that I think we get along about.
I know. I mean, maybe we could take yours again. I don't know, because I took 5.
But I'm like, is a test valid if you have to take it 5 times?
I know. And that's why I was like, if I would have taken this maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, I probably would have answered differently. So I'm just like, how do they actually know that that's like your type? This one was like Dakota's solid result, like different times. So I thought that was interesting because part of me like was questioning the test validity, but then if someone else took it and got like a solid number each time, I was like, oh, maybe it's just me. But I felt like it resonated really well with like how he is. So I don't know.
I got myself on the screen. Sorry.
What?
Because it was just showing your face and the screen, but I finally figured out how to show both of our faces and the screen.
Oh yeah, girl.
Sorry, I didn't want to mess with it too much. But you can go back. Sorry.
No, that was it. I mean, I want to also segue into our feature, but that's kind of it with Enneagrams. We're kind of mixed in how we feel about it, just because there were mixed results. But we still think there's value in it, and I think maybe your number might be clearer than ours. So try it out.
Oh. They call it the map of the human psyche. It's like a person, one of the, like a personality test.
Yeah.
But that's like the actual, interesting. Yeah, because I was like, why all of a sudden is this a thing? I love how this article is also titled the same thing. What the hell is the Enneagram? That's the article.
people say it, I'm like, what is that word? Like, how do you pronounce that?
But like, okay, I guess I'm trying to think what is just this wave. I mean, it's been around, but like I still haven't found what has made people just be like Enneagrams, or was it just like Valentine's Day and they just decided to throw in a personality test?
No, I mean, I feel like it's been around. Like, I've heard of it a couple times, but never like dove into it. But I think it was just coincidental that like you had mentioned it, and then I had heard about it, and I was like, huh.
I think it's a wave. I disagree because I see people post about it all the time, and it's like, I didn't hear about this in 2020.
But it's been around.
I mean, it's been around. I mean, but so has yoga. Like, and that was a wave.
The Myers-Briggs personality test thing too, like
that's been around. Yeah. I guess to me, I'm just sorry. Like, I guess I'm not skeptical because I like to take these things and I like to explore more about them. But sometimes I'm just like, is this really one that I want to follow? I guess, it's like religion.
Yeah.
It's like, is this one that I really agree with? So I guess to me, it's like in high school, I feel like I brought this up, but I don't know if you remember this, and I can't remember if you said you remember this. But in high school, they used to pass around these like little tests, and you take the test, whatever it is, or you go to a website and you take a test, and then on like Valentine's Day, they'd give you a paper, and it would say like ranking, like who your best friend is based on students in the school.
Yeah.
And I actually got my best friend at the time. Like, I got Madari, which I thought was so interesting. And I could have been like, this is a great test. This is accurate. This is actually my best friend. So, I mean, I could have believed in that weird pink paper test that I did. So, I don't know. Kat Leia's conclusion on this is take it. It seems cool. If you identify with it, great. But not my favorite.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, that being said,
I prefer astrology because it's at least based on something more concrete, like the time you were born and the place you were born. So
yes, and it just is. You just are.
Yeah.
This is
it. This is like, depending on the day or mood you're in, you might answer these questions differently. So that's why I'm always weird with personality tests. It's like, I might be in a different mood in a week and answer these totally different.
And what if, like, okay, let's say you did, form your thoughts when you 0 to 6 years old or whatever, childhood, let's just even say that. But then, when you were 18, you went to therapy for 10 years and you had to you had to undo that or create a new mindset. And now you don't think like that anymore. So
yeah. I know. And whenever I heard that it was like established between ages 0 and 6, I was like, oh, okay. So like it should be easier to distinguish which number is yours if like it was established that early on. It shouldn't be questions you answer like now.
Yeah.
Like that's weird.
Right. I'm like, shouldn't we have taken this when we were 0 to 6?
No.
Like, I don't understand. Like, you take a test to get into gifted, then you also take your Enneagram test. Then maybe you take it again when you're 28.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mixed feelings. But moving on to our next segment.
Yeah.
We're really excited to, if anyone is just joining for the first time, we have a Facebook group. That's our community. And we have our weekly chats right here. Where we can answer your questions live, or if you submit questions, we'll address them here, or at least address them somehow, whether it's through the community or through email. But if you have a side hustle or main hustle, you're looking to start something, definitely join the Facebook group, so you can talk to the community and network and get your questions answered, whether it's us or the community answering them. And we just want it to be a fun place for entrepreneurs, because I feel like a lot of times we just feel like, when you need to have a business mentor, it's like, oh, you need to pay a ton of money for this, or you don't know who to go to for help, or maybe your friends aren't into the same things that you are, which is totally fine, but you still need a community. So hopefully we can be there for
And
them.
in light of that, we created a form if anyone's interested in getting a little more personal advice on their business idea or actual business. We now have a Leveling Up Your Business form. We have it linked in our IG and then also on Facebook.
I'm going to post it here.
Facebook group. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So if you, obviously share questions in the Facebook group. We will get back to those. But if you did have a little bit more that you wanted to discuss, then fill out that form and we'll either email you back, give you a call, whatever you prefer, or have you on our live show on Mondays. So we have our first one today.
Yay.
She's based in Ohio and she recently started a business with another person. So it's a team and it's based in wedding and events. So Kat can kind of speak on that a little more because she has a lot of experience with those. But it's a event services, I guess, company. I don't want to give too much away about it just because preserving the idea. But she had a couple questions that she wanted us to discuss. And I think a lot of you can relate to these questions when it comes to starting a business. So one of the questions in a basic sense, we'll get deeper into them as we go through here, but building a brand was one of them. So how to go about doing that. Partnering with someone else, which we kind of branched into that because her initial question was how to pay back initial investments. So how to cover startup costs or supply costs when it's split between two people. And then the other one was fear of failure when starting a business, which we're excited to get into because it doesn't go away. But we also did want to mention our trial and error episode talks a lot about failure in general and kind of just how to reframe failure as an entrepreneur. We'll get into that. We'll go in order. And she did answer quite a few questions on our form. So just to kind of give you guys an idea of where she's at, she did create an LLC. There is no website or social media handles as of yet, but there is a marketing plan in mind.
She's been working on it for about 1 to 3 months. That was our category.
So recently,
it's
fresh business. But we love that she already created an LLC because that means she's committed. She's doing it.
Yes. And she has a business partner.
And there's a business partner involved, yeah. So, we are big proponents of having a team because, I did everything solo. Kat has kind of been in and out of doing that as well, and it's really tough. Right. So it's really nice to kind of share the weight of everything by having a partner. And
I like that sometimes we share things, not because we did it right. We think we did it wrong, and we're trying to save you time.
Yeah.
For some of those things.
Definitely a plus. We did have some notes on that too, how to basically have a successful partnership.
Well, let's start with the first one. So her main question to start with was, how should she approach marketing? And I think that is a great point to bring up, but we wanted to backtrack a little bit because I feel like a lot of people think that they have their, they have their idea, they bought stuff, marketing. But I feel like there's still a couple of things that you should figure out before you start pitching your brand, meaning you should build the brand. And, if you're on our chat today, feel free to type anything at any point, or if you're not able to use it, feel free to connect with Sasha via text or whatever, and we can try to answer or clarify if you want to clarify something. But I guess for me, we were talking about the short form of it is you should be able to create your elevator pitch, which was also a different episode. But I'll have Sasha go into it a little bit. But the big form is create a business plan. But if you're trying to do something quick and this is just for fun on the side, at least have an elevator pitch, because when you have to create that, you have to think about so many other things and establish your brand, especially if you have a partner.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if you wanted to kind of ask questions or talk about wedding and events in general, just from your experience. Because she did mention that she's going to have a photo booth rental, cotton candy, and I wasn't sure because I'm not really familiar with events and stuff, if there were other components to think of or if there were packages you had in mind that they could kind of market to people.
Yeah, so I guess with Sasha and I talked a little bit yesterday with building a brand, it was basically we're asking, why would people choose you? And you should always think about why would people choose you, regardless of whether you're having, 2 events a week, 4 events a week, no events this week. Why would people choose you? And it's also potentially, it stems from the same thing, but it's potentially ever changing with the times and with what you're offering. But I guess the main thing is, what is your goal and your target market, which is based on what Sasha's saying. What is this industry like? And I just want to throw in as an overall looming dome here that COVID is a big issue right now, factor in this. But COVID aside, let's put COVID aside. But I think the wedding and event industry is never going to end, right? People will always be celebrating, but I guess how do you fit in? You're doing event rentals, which are always needed, but what kind of events are going to be needing that, right? So let's say you mentioned high school dances, and it's because of this type of event rentals she's offering. High school dances, what kind of budget do they have? So it's also the clientele. So if corporate and high school dances, that's kind of like the same thing. I guess high school dances is lower budget than a corporate thing would be, but that's different from marketing to weddings. Weddings want like the cute little thing and blah blah blah. And maybe in Ohio, like let's say certain things are more popular, like in Nashville, if you offer a whiskey bar cart, you will literally always be working. Yeah. But also knowing the event market in Ohio, and that takes either talking to a friend that's in event, or if you were in events, stuff like that. Meaning, like in Nashville, which is very different from Miami, but in Nashville, your wedding package, let's say at a hotel or at a venue, may not come with a bar service. That's not automatic. Let's say you pay this amount, you get this event. It doesn't come with a bar service. In Miami, no event comes without bar service. Like every event has a bar service package that's already attached to it, because that's just the nature of the industry. But in Nashville, there's a liquor tax, so sometimes bars are optional, which is funny because I feel like in Nashville they drink a lot anyway. But just stuff like that, where what is the trend in Ohio or the surrounding areas, like wherever you're willing to travel to, and even if you're offering something and you think it's like maybe not that common, how do you make it common? How do you make them want it? Why would they choose you in that way? Because let's say you offer something weird, like I saw wedding bounce houses. I was like, when I first saw that, I was like, what the heck is a wedding bounce house? But it's a bounce house. It's all white and it's made for adults. Like, I don't want one for my wedding. But it's such a specific rental, That's like, what even is that? So you need to really pitch it well. And they, like that wedding bounce house, maybe I can try to share that maybe in an email or later on the group. But they have such a specific look where it just looks gorgeous and you want one. But why?
Well, I think that's also part of like the marketing plan, is making sure you're correctly advertising your services so that they're very like visually appealing and attractive, and people like want to do that. Even if it's a weird thing that you're kind of like trying out, if it looks awesome and the pictures or whatever you're showing, people will want to do it. And that might make you stand out against other competitors that you might have in your area. So then people would choose you. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing too is like, once you know your customer and the types of services that they want, then you can kind of build like maybe a package deal or something like if you are doing weddings and high school dances and something else. I'm just thinking of this because the website and the social media stuff hasn't been created yet, which is good because you have like a blank slate to work from. So I think it'd be nice for the marketing plan if you thought of like different categories of services and like packages that you might want to have offered. That way people know what they're getting. It's very clear cut. And then they can also like, if they did come to you for a wedding, but they also see you did high school dances, like you now have, that one client could be 2 separate sales potentially, or like they could kind of get a better grasp of what you do. And I don't know what your LLC name is, but that might also kind of play into what you market the most or kind of like focus on in your marketing plan. And then I won't go too much into this because we're actually going to talk about this next week, but pre-launches are super important. So especially with marketing, doing a pre-launch is where you basically have your website, your Instagram, everything that you're going to have to market your business, but it's before it launched. So even if you don't have the website yet, let's say, but you have like a landing page that's just like coming soon. But on your Instagram, you're like highlighting all the key points. You have the photography ready. You have all the tags you need, just to kind of amp up the appeal of it, so that once you actually do launch, you already have a lot of people going to your website and already know about it, and they can already plan ahead and kind of just hopefully get sales right away. I didn't do a pre-launch.
Yeah.
Deeply regret it. We won't go into it too much on this one because we're going to do a whole segment on it next week. But that definitely plays into this marketing plan idea, along with like nailing down your pricing, your services, your packages, just making sure everything is organized so that it's like user friendly. Like when a customer comes to you, whatever avenue you choose, whether it's a Facebook page, an Instagram, or a website, they have to know like, okay, this is this, and just know where to go from there so that they actually make the sale or book the service.
Right. And I think that's especially important too, because it kind of goes in hand with target market, and how you would target high school dances is definitely different than how you would target weddings. But if you're able to make it clear that this is, a corporate pricing and this is a wedding pricing, or your pictures just reflect that all types of events, then that's fine. But it needs to be clear, especially with a business partner. If someone walks up to you in the middle of the street and they're like, hey, don't you own this eventual rental services? I'm looking for this for my daughter's 10th birthday at XYZ place, and XYZ place is super low budget and there's no way that they would be able to afford you. You're not going to reject them on the spot, but you have to know in your mind, is this the right client for me? It shouldn't be like, I normally charge $1,200 for this rental and, I'll give it to you for $200. Like that doesn't even match with what you're doing. So just definitely detailing your services is important, because what if you need to charge a certain amount because of the cost of something or the time that it takes to get to a certain place? And it's good to know where you're servicing, because you're not going to service a place that's 3 hours away and not charge transportation or delivery or whatever it is. So
consider your customers first. I mean, that if that's not nailed down enough yet, definitely spend a lot of time knowing who you're serving and what areas you're serving, because that's going to dictate your cost, dictate what you offer, and dictate how feasible it is for you and your partner. So definitely spend time knowing that, and also just doing more research on like what the customers are looking for, what they're expecting, what weddings they've gone to, or what weddings they've, been most attracted to, or events. And then, I mean, it could be even simpler than this. Like maybe if you're just serving a local community and you just have a business card and you just hand it out. I mean, that could be enough. I mean, we're just thinking of all the different possibilities.
Yeah. Let's say like you were
customer, and the pricing, I think, is like, bare minimum.
If you are, like Sasha was saying, let's say you really just want to do event services for this. Maybe you got a gig already and it's just at this one high school or at this one farmer's market, literally every week or every other week, and you just want to tailor it to that, that's fine. And then you just adjust as you grow, but it still has to be tailored. Like it can't just be like, I'm going to show up with my little whatever product and just set up camp. I mean, you can do that. It's just, I guess to me, it's just there's so much competition now, which I think, let's say even 5 years ago, if you wanted to have your little food cart, and you show up with your hot dog carts at various events and, you only have a Facebook page, that's fine. But now it's almost like a standard. It's like you go to a job interview without a resume. Like if you don't have a brand or an online presence, because it's so easy to build, you're nobody.
Yeah, I will say though, another error that I ran into in the early stage is I spent too much time thinking like, I need a website, I need business cards, I need this, I need that. And I was told by my mentor, like, just get customers. Like, get customers, and the other stuff will come. So I think it could depend too, like if you're at a point where people are already asking you for these things, or you're already kind of well known that you do this or that you offer this, go ahead and make that sale, book that service. Like, don't wait until you have a website and all these things, but definitely know the pricing and the packages, or like how you're going to set up your services, because if that changes along the way, that can get really messy, because they might start telling other people about it. Like, oh, I hired so-and-so for this event. It was this much. And then they come back and it's a different price. So I would say at least nail down your pricing and your like networking, your initial networking. That way you can just start building sales even before having all those other components.
Right.
It makes you look stronger, I think, if you have those other things, like a website, social media, all that stuff. But if you're just local mostly, and if it's a services-based industry or like an event-based thing, you probably are local. So I think you'd be fine just making sales and then kind of working on the other stuff as they come.
And I agree with Sasha. And if you already have people, that's awesome. If you don't have people, then, spend a little more time finding people while you're working on your online presence. Since you have the LLC, I would go and save the handles. If you don't have a domain for your website yet, because you don't have time to build it, I would honestly still get it. But if you don't get it, at least get the Instagram handle saved, even if you don't post yet, because you don't want somebody else to take it. But I think at the very least, to close out this first question, you should have something for people to reference. So if it's a pricing sheet that's a PDF, like literally a complete sheet, not just like, oh, I wrote down on Post-its what my pricing is going to be. Because you also have a partner, like you two should be able to be on the same page. If someone asks your partner, how much do you charge for this? She should be able to give the same answer as you. So you just have one document. If someone inquires about something, you should be able to send a document. If, theoretically in the future, you'd send them to a website. But if you don't have that yet, at least have a document so that you look like something.
Yeah, you could use Canva to make that document in 5 minutes and it'll look banging. Like, yeah. Just they have a ton of templates. You could even just create a design, search wedding or search high school, whatever it is, and they will.
There's like literally menu. You search menu and just change the items on the.
Yeah. I mean, it'll even probably already have services listed, and you could be like, oh yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So it's super quick and easy, and it's free. So just if you go to Canva, you can just make it there and then have it for your clients.
So to recap on that, it's have your elevator pitch, which includes your goal, your target market, and your mission, like what you're supposed to be representing. That doesn't have to be this like nonprofit mission thing where like we're hoping to save the world. Like it could just be we're making events more unique and simple for you, like whatever it is,
I'm putting notes in the chat like of the like main points that we're hitting on.
So and then the second thing is detail your plans and services, and the third thing is building your online presence. So that way all three of those lead up to your pre-launch. Well, then your launch. This is all your pre-launch, and then so your launch is good. That's a good starting point, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next question. So the other question was about paying back initial investments, and this mostly come up because it's a team. One person might be putting in the initial cost of buying the event supplies, so like buying the cotton candy machine or the photo booth or something. But obviously both of you are going to work these events whenever they're booked. So the question came up of like, how do you handle kind of paying back the person that bought the event supplies or whatever it is to run this startup initially? This could even include the cost of like the website or whatever else might be involved. And I guess we chatted about this because there's different options to kind of how to handle partnerships best. The first thing I think as a basic principle is just to make sure you're communicating clearly and both of you are equally involved. Like definitely have weekly meetings, pitch ideas, pitch concepts, discuss everything through and make sure you take notes on everything discussed. And then when I initially started Botana Bites, I was going to partner with someone, and I mean, immediately we thought of like a potential contract that we would write up and sign. Because it is kind of tricky when it gets into the details because one person might be putting in more financially or one person might be putting in more time. So it's kind of hard to know how to best gauge what's equal and fair. So make sure you both understand your roles and like your responsibilities. I think that would also be a good point to start with, is like, what are you best at? What am I best at? And then how to delegate that best. Because there are a lot of different components too. So having that weekly meeting will help keep fresh on those things, because in a business things change as well. And then obviously contract if needed.
Yeah. And even if it's your best friend, okay, Sasha and I are in this Sasha and the Cat thing together. We don't have a contract. But we have also, I don't want to say it's because we've been friends for a long time, because I don't think that has anything to do with it. I would honestly say because we've worked with other people a lot. So we understand that, like, we need to tell each other everything. Like, I know that's sounds easy, but when it's your friend especially, it's hard to sometimes say what you need to say, which then only builds up and it does not get better. And I'm not talking about like, oh, I don't like her haircut and I'm not going to tell her anything and then it grows out horribly and wow, I wish I said something. Like, we're talking about she's making way more money than you are because you didn't say anything in the beginning. So, it's definitely, like Sasha said, if a contract is needed, then go for it. But at least say what each person is doing. And if you're like, oh, well, we're both doing the same thing. Like, no, you're not. Even if you both have good skills for the same thing, you are not doing the same thing, because that's a poor use of resources. So if one is good at going out to the event and performing the services, and maybe the other one is good at sales and, taking in all the emails, answering.
Yeah.
Say that part again, because it could.
Like pulling in the clients or managing that part, yeah.
And if neither one of you is good at that, you better pick one, because you can't both be performing services and no one's answering.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to say, because I know the main reason that you guys are doing the business is because it's fun. So I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun if you guys both go to the events and like do that together. And you want to keep it fun. Like, don't ever get so involved that it's not fun, because that would really hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think if that's the case, if you guys are both going to be involved in a lot of different things, just having clearly set roles will be helpful. Regarding the financial aspect, there's like a couple options that we kind of came up with. So obviously the main one is what we talked about, just like kind of knowing what the roles are and who's managing what. But also, what I've seen done a lot is like one person or maybe two people are like the idea person, or they're the ones that have the skill in that background or in that industry, or they're the ones that know the client base and like already have that knowledge. They're kind of like the one that provides like the initial fire.
The creative director.
Yeah. And then the other person is just like the financial person. Like, they're the ones that just put in the initial investment. They trust the other person knows what they're doing. They trust their business idea, and they're just like, I can offer money. I'm going to offer money. And that's kind of just their agreement. And because of that, the other creative person might put in a lot more time for sure, while the other person just gives the money. But if that's their set agreement and that's what works for them, then that's okay. So you kind of just have to see what is fair and what works for both of you. Because I have seen that done most often, where it's like just kind of, it's just a different thing for each person. The other option is, like, let's say you put the initial cost down for the supplies, and then you guys have an event. And I think the kind of like question is, let's say you get paid for that event, who does the money go to? If like person A paid, $1,000 for supplies, but then you do an event, you get this much. So that would have to just be discussed between both of you.
So let's say if you can we go into one of the scenarios?
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say you paid person A, team member A, and there's team member A and team member B. Team member A spent $1,000 on supplies, and the team member B didn't spend anything. Then you had an event for $1,000. So you can either choose that all that money goes from the event goes back to team member A until any debt is paid off. Or if you're like, man, that's going to leave team member B lost in the dark until I pay this off, Well, let's say team member A spent like $3,000 because then it's like one event paid it off. Okay, so you spent $3,000. You had an event for $1,000. You can take the $1,000 and leave your team member in the dark until you book 4 events, you know, because the 4th one you would then start splitting 50-50. Or you can do an agreed upon percentage where 40% of anything, this is a random number, you don't have to do 40%, but let's say 40% of what you make at an event goes to the cost, regardless of like whatever. Okay, sorry, goes to the cost, right? So you spent $3,000, you made $1,000 on this event, so $400 of that goes to the cost, and you happen to have spent the money on the supplies. So $400 goes to you just for cost. But then there's $600 left. You can still split that 50-50, 300 and 300, assuming there's no other cost for the actual event. Then technically you made $700, but you didn't because you spent $3,000 up front. So that's one way, like that's another way to split it. I've seen that being done in groups of people that are both contributing members, meaning like you would both be at the event, or you would both, like, not just one financial person, like Sasha was mentioning. So that I've seen it done. But I just want to note that if team member B also spent, let's say team member B spent $1,000, right? So you can still do like 40% goes to cost, and that's $400. And then you could do 50% of that. So $200 for you, $200 for her for the cost until the cost is paid off. And obviously hers would be paid off first because she only spent $1,000 and you spent $3,000. But at least you would always get a percentage going to your cost. Either way, because you're just starting this, you're probably it's gonna take a few events to make all the money back. But because it is for fun, this is the most horrible part of it. So you should address it first. And that way it could just be fun.
Yeah, like definitely just get it out of the way.
Yes, whatever it is.
Like you could say 20% of every event goes to cost. Yeah. Even when the cost is paid off, like whatever supplies you guys bought is paid off, because let's say 2 years from now, you guys want to upgrade your cotton candy machine or buy a new service and add it. Like it's good to just have that money put away for potential growth in whatever it is. So I think it's good to not just assume that like 100% of what you make from every event will just be paid to you, but a lot of like there's certain percent that will be towards upgrading your business essentially, or website fees, whatever it might be. So just consider, I guess, that part of it too.
I think we mentioned we're gonna post our business checklist today. Sorry, Sasha, I didn't post it yesterday. But basically it says to create a bank account if you get to this point. The only reason I would personally push some of the structure of it, even though it's for fun, is because there's 2 of you. If it was just you going out, doing cotton candy rentals, you can kind of manage it. But because there's someone else involved and there's a financial aspect of it, you could always get even a checking account, even though we recommend both checking and credit. But even if it's a checking account, and get 2 cards. And that way you can easily keep track of who's using what. Kind of.
Fun. Like you could just do a spreadsheet.
Yes, that's the easier. I mean, that's the
spreadsheet for all your purchases, and just put the person's name of who covered that purchase, and put maybe like when I had spreadsheets before I used QuickBooks, I just had it by month. So I had like a January one, and then I had the date of the purchase, the amount of the purchase, the vendor or the person, the place that I bought it from, and then a note section. So you guys could just put your names for those notes or whatever. Because I mean, if someone did pay X, Y, and Z in January, it might not be until April that you like pay that off. So it's good to keep track of it, because in some months, like when you do your profit and loss statements, every month it could be different. Like in January, you might be negative because you spent so much in supplies. But then in June or July, you might have made a bunch of profit from events, but really it isn't, that big of a deal because you were still negative from previous months. So it's important to keep track of purchases, note who made the purchase, and then also have a spreadsheet for income. So that way you can keep track of all the different amounts you're making from the services you're providing. And then you can use those 2 to run your profit and loss statement. QuickBooks does this for you, but it's best if you have a bank account to link to QuickBooks. So if you're not at that point yet and it's just for fun, you can just do the spreadsheets, and I think you'd be more than good with just that.
Yeah, I agree. The spreadsheet is probably the most straightforward way, so that you just have to make sure you're both at your weekly meeting. Make sure you both are updating that, keep your receipts and all that. It sounds like a lot in the beginning, but once you guys have a groove, you won't even think about it, and you'll just enjoy going to the events and booking stuff. So
yeah, and it helps you even be good with like your personal financial management, like just, I don't know, being aware of like tracking everything. And it won't be that much that you're tracking. I mean, if you just make a purchase 1 month and then you have an event the next month, I mean, that's only 2 things you're entering into your spreadsheet.
Right, yeah.
It's good to set a reminder at the end of each month to just make sure you run that profit and loss statement, because it's nice to also use that profit and loss statement to regroup on like what worked this month, what didn't work, or like, we only had 2 events this month, but this holiday was going on. We could have had more events. What can we do different next month? Or it kind of just makes you start looking ahead, where it's like, okay, we're at the end of January, February is coming, March is coming. What can we kind of like market to our people to get more clients during these months? Mm-hmm. So it's a good point to just regroup with your partner and see what to do next.
I'm gonna say this like little side mini plug, that feel free to like email us, and I'm happy to say anything else about the crazy event industry. But I think, sorry, I just remembered something because Sasha just mentioned about an event in July or something, that especially with events, it's seasonal, which I'm sure you know if you've worked an event. But because it's seasonal, just make sure that you're both on the same page, that, you know, you're going to be booking or working more during this time of the year, and decide what you're going to do during the off season. You know, like, are we going to store this somewhere? Are we still going to try to keep working? Are we going to try different kinds of events? Because it is a thing, especially in Ohio, I would say, because of the weather. Like hotels in Nashville in winter close their pool decks, or the rooftops, I mean, and then they create igloos, because you can't even, who's going to be out there in the pool deck and the rooftop in December? So they do a completely different thing, and there's little igloos that you can rent out. It's a completely different vibe, but I'm not saying you have to do anything crazy. It could just be as simple as not doing anything, but just keep that in mind, and then know that maybe in March or September, you're going to be working a ton.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good little recap, and feel free to ask us any questions.
I know, and sorry we're throwing out so much. Like, I know you're in the beginning phase and you're just wanting it to be fun. So if this is like way too much, just take what you can from it.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. And if you have any more questions beyond this, like, feel free to reach out to us at any point. But yeah, the third one is the fear of failure of starting a business.
Well, all right. So recap, the second is basically communicate with your partner is the main thing. Whatever it is that you decide, communicate with them.
Well, I use spreadsheets to track costs and income. I think that's important. Yes. Come up with some sort of agreement between you and your partner, so that you guys
That's like the main 2 things.
Yeah.
Okay, so the fear of failure, this was kind of like an add-on question, and we're just going to go into it a little bit. Madame.
Me?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. So for fear of failure of starting a business, we talked about this a lot in our trial and error talk, and I guess we should link that. Did you link it in there?
No, but I can.
So basically with entrepreneurship or owning a business in general, nothing is a failure. And you have to know that, like, because there's no one right way to do business. Everyone does it differently. Everyone has a different path, a different route, a different aha moment. Like, everything is completely unique to your process. That's kind of like liberating, but can also be scary, because you're just like, how do I know if I'm doing it right? The way I view it is just, as long as you're doing it right. But I think what's key in the whole failure concept is just knowing everything you learn is just so that you can move forward. So nothing's actually a failure. It's just a learning opportunity. And as long as you make notes of that failure or learning opportunity and just make sure you learned from it and know how to move forward, I think that's going to help you the most in just going after it. I mean, especially if it's for fun, it's just for fun. So there's no real failure. Like there's a lot less pressure on you because of that. So as long as you even book one event, like if that's your goal because it was fun, then that's a win. I don't know if like failure could pertain to like if you do an event and something went wrong, like the cotton candy machine didn't work when you showed up. I mean, yes, that's a failure, and maybe plan for like backup options of how to best handle the potential failures that might happen on the scene, since it is a more like services based industry. But I've had countless failures. I mean, like full failures. Okay? Like,
Sasha once threw away like 24 muffins. You remember that?
I've thrown away more muffins than I can count. I've had garbage bags full of muffins
because she missed an ingredient and she was like, "They're horrible." I was
like, I can't even tell you. Baking is difficult, I will say. So at least you're not in that industry. But yeah, all you have to do is suck it up. Like you just have to laugh at it, cry inside, and move on.
I think it's just more, if you view it more as a situation. We have a situation, right? The cotton candy machine isn't working. Oh crap. It's more, how am I going to handle this? If you handle it well with the client, they'll be happy. Maybe you lost a little bit of money. You know, maybe they won't even hire you again, but there's literally 7 billion people. I mean, it's okay. And now you learned you're going to fix the cotton candy machine. You're going to move on. I think it's more important that you handle the situation well than be like, oh, sorry, lady, sucks to suck. You know, you lose a client, they talk crap about you. And even sometimes that happens. And you know what? It was one person. So I think if you view it as a situation, it won't really be a loss. And sometimes the only thing you can, you can't prepare for those things. What if you double check the machine? I mean, sometimes it just stops working, or sometimes you just don't have the extra cones or whatever. Like, it happens. And I think if you just handle it well and you learn from it, I mean, that's all you can really do. I mean, we've had people at our hotel in the past that just literally owed $10,000 and we never heard from them again. So what do you want me to do?
I mean, there's times where I've done events that were like extremely successful, mind-blowingly successful, that I would have never expected. And then I've done events where they were like complete failures. But I mean, you kind of understand too, like everyone else failed that day, or like, you know, it was just a bad turnout for whatever reason that may have not been in your control, or the one successful time may have just been a fluke. But everything you do is just a learning opportunity, and it's like a trial and error situation for all of it. So there's no real failure in entrepreneurship because it's just part of the journey of it.
And I always think too, when people say like the fear of failure, and we're saying this because it's not like, oh, we're like, we've never gone through this. We still go through this, and we did go through this. It's not so much the fear of failure. The failure isn't really the focus. I think it's fear in general. That's the focus of that. And I mean, you could also stage it as fear of succeeding. Like, I mean, what are you really, like, it's the same kind of fear because it's just not, it's just an emotional aspect. What happened still happened. You know, who knows if that cotton candy machine broke, you handle it so well that they wanted to like hire you for all their events for some reason. You know what I mean? Like, that's honestly a success, but technically it's a failure. Your machine broke. So I think it's just getting over just fear in general, because I mean, every time you're scared of failing, you're also scared of succeeding. So I'd rather send a message, try to work with a client, follow up with a client, fix a situation, and said I tried my best, than just freak out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, where it's kind of the same thing. Like, fear of failure would be a fear of success, because either option is scary, but also like connected.
Yeah. So, I think the trial and error was a good episode because it really talks about handling the failure. So, and making educated risks and guesses from that going forward. And This sounds all structural, but you'll know when you're at the event. or when you're talking to a client, which we're also going to have a separate episode later about types of clients, because that is a thing. There's external factors that affect what you're doing, especially with events. Weather is even one. I mean, that's no person, that's no product that's breaking. But you need to try to be as prepared as possible. But the best trait is being resilient, just jumping back and going forward. And it is what it is. It's just an event. I always say, especially in the event industry, we're not saving any lives here. That sounds horrible. But at the end of the day, you're not a freaking surgeon that's stopping or helping somebody come back to life. Like, it's okay. And sorry, I just wanted to point a last note about, a lot of times people say fear of failure, but it's a lot of times also fear of not being enough or somebody copying your idea. And this is so lame, and you've probably heard it in a commercial, or you've heard it 1,000 times, or from your parents, that oh shit, I just forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, that the only difference between you and them is that they did it. And that is true, except now you are the they, right? The only difference between you and that other person copying you is that you're doing it. So many people just stop and fall off the radar. And literally the biggest thing is that you and your partner just need to push through. So whether you fail, or whether you're scared of somebody copying you, or scared of going to this event because it's in the mountains, like, just keep going.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you're afraid of the financial part of it, where, like, you invested, like, thousands initially, and now you have to do 10 events in order to pay it all back, but what if you don't get 10 events in time, or something else goes wrong and now you have more costs? Like, if it's a financial fear of failure, I think for that, maybe just have a good goal in mind, or a timeline where it's like, okay, let's invest this much, but let's calculate how many events at what price we would have to lock in by, 2 years from now, let's say, in order to see a profit, or in order to break even, or whatever your goal is. But maybe think of that in, like, a long-term way of, like, how many clients do we need in order to pay back everything that we've spent? That way, if that's, like, your main fear with the failure thing, because I know there are businesses that will invest, like $20,000 up front of just, I have a great idea and a website. Like, and maybe they have the investment to do that, or maybe they have investors that are willing to, try it out. But that's a huge fear, because you're like, no, I got to make this work, because that's a huge investment. If you guys are doing this for fun, I'm sure it's not at that point, but I just wanted to mention that, like, the way around that, I think, would just be to calculate the risk and calculate the potential for success by knowing, like, how many sales you'll have to make, or how many events you'd have to book in order for you to pay back everything.
Right. And even if it seems ridiculous, even if it's like, I spent $3,000 and I need to book 10 events to pay this back, and you're like, what the heck how am I going to get 10 events in the middle of COVID? At least you have a number to work towards. Let's say you only had 6 events. At least you freaking had 6 events. You could have had 0 events and had all this money that you spent. So, I think, especially because it's for fun, I know we're using all these words like plan this, calculate that, create a spreadsheet. I just hope that you can just still have fun with it. All of this work you can do in 2 days, creating a spreadsheet and creating a pricing sheet, doing some research, hanging out with your friend, getting on the same page. I mean, this is all 2 days work. Of course, if you want to go further, go further. And also, don't freak out. You start with 2 items. Maybe you only rent out cotton candy and photo booth. And don't, and yes, it's only for fun. And maybe that's what you do. Maybe that's what you do for the next 5 years for fun with your friend on the side. And you rent out these 2 things. But who knows? It might change. You might grow. You might change your product, like still event services, but change it all together to bounce houses. Like, who knows where it'll go, and just be open to any of that. And also, if you ever have questions, you're like, I'm stuck in this thing, or does this spreadsheet look good, or you want to just see if there's anyone in Ohio, feel free to just write in the Facebook group. It's literally just a group of other people trying to do the same thing you are. Well, not exactly the same, not event services, but like, that's why it's there. Even if we can't get back to you, like, we'll try to get back to you, but that's a group of people that are just here to help. And that's why I say the fear of copying thing too, because it's just a fear. Ain't nobody out there trying to go buy that right now. Buy all those event services, like products, I mean.
That's a good point you mentioned too, and I'm going to write that in the chat, because I think with fear of starting a small business or just being in it in general, having a mentor helps tremendously. Because you know someone else that did it, or you know someone else that understands like the unique struggle of it, and usually they can offer a lot of help and insight. So I think it's really helpful to just reach out to people, reach out to a community, and just discuss things openly, because that'll help a lot with like feeling fear.
And that's so funny. Sasha and I are going to be talking about plans and services after this call. For SATC, so we're doing the same thing. Honestly, this is another small business venture, and we like to differentiate between just a business owner and an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs like to crank out a bunch of businesses, almost like someone who flips houses. I would say Sasha's a strong, hardcore entrepreneur. I would say I'm halfway, because I really believe in the kits and pieces, so I've stuck with that for a while. But I used to have a hair salon, so who knows? That's a joke. I had one when I was like 8. Just kidding, like 12. But anyway, we hope that you were able to get some kind of starting points off of this, and we'll definitely be sending you a recap via email after. And yeah, we definitely encourage you to go for it. And if you ever have any questions, email us, write in the group, and we're here for you.
Yes, thank you so much for letting us discuss your business and being open enough to share everything with us. It was really exciting and fun, and I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting to be able to like go talk about an actual person, you know, like we talk about ourselves and it's like, we know about ourselves. Like, yeah. I mean, even this is helpful. You know how we're telling you to, I don't know if she's even still watching, but we're telling her to talk to her partner every week. I mean, that's how we started this, is we talk every week just to go over our separate businesses, but because we are kind of each other's mentors, at least for now, well, Sasha has like a bunch of mentors, but it evolved into this. So I think you just always got to be open and be on the same page. And that's it.
Yes. And again, we have send your...
Wait, say that again. It cut out a second. Your internet is... Okay, it's back.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. We have our form available if you guys want to also send your information in so we can discuss it. It's on our IG and in Facebook. Leveling Up Your Business form.
Yay, we're so excited. Okay, and then just to close this out, because we got to go, we will be talking about pre-launches next week, because it's also my birthday next week. What?
Oh my God, that's great.
What? I'm getting old, team. It's this plus 28. Also, I got to 1,000 followers on my Instagram. That's why I have a 1. And there's going to be a K. I'm going to be a basic blogger today after this. I'm not a blogger, but anyway. But yeah, it's so interesting though, because I just want to say this last note about the fear of copying kind of thing, because I know that's an underlying thought in a lot of people. But I used to think, if I go to someone else that also has an event thing, are they just going to like take my idea? And I'm telling you now, I will not take your idea. I think it's a good idea. I will not take your idea. Because I used to think that. I don't know. I used to think that all the time. So.
I think a lot of people think that, but it takes so much effort to actually put an idea out there and into existence. They're not going to do it.
And if they do it, it takes a lot more to keep it going.
Yeah. So I just don't even worry about it. I mean, I used to freak out because Botana Bites was such a unique recipe that I was just like, I don't want anyone to know like how it's made or anything. But when you do events and stuff, people are super like intrigued and how it, tastes so good and blah, blah, blah. But I realized like no one's going to put the time and effort into doing this themselves. So
yeah, it is a thing. It is a thing. Well, hopefully we can catch y'all next week. Honestly, now that next week we're going to talk about pre-launches, I'm like considering, while I do some research, if I should, it wouldn't be a pre-launch, but do an actual launch. I feel like I never launched it. It just became like this like wave, and then it became a thing. So maybe that's worth talking about too, because I feel like a lot of people who start off maybe just at markets or on Etsy, and then it just becomes a thing.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, all right, team.